Captain Dae-ho Kim stood on the bridge of his cargo ship and looked at the stars. He had been flying through space for 15 years now. His ship, the Indomitable Spirit, carried food and supplies from Earth to the human colonies. It was not exciting work, but it was honest work, or at least it should have been. The problem was the Galactic Council. They made the rules and humans had to follow them. Every time Dae-ho docked at a council station, he paid heavy taxes. Every time he tried to take a shortcut through space, council ships stopped him. They checked his papers. They searched his cargo. They treated him like a criminal even though he had done nothing wrong. The worst part was the way they looked at him. The alien species in the council thought humans were stupid, weak, barely better than animals. They called humans a Class 9 species. That meant humans were near the bottom of the list. Only one group ranked lower. Dae-ho remembered the first time he met a Vrexil. The Vrexil were big reptile creatures with sharp teeth and scales like armor. They ran the council's military. The Vrexil officer had looked down at Dae-ho and laughed. He said humans smelled bad. He said Earth was a dirty little planet. Then he made Dae-ho wait 6 hours before clearing his ship to leave. That was just how things were. Humans had no power in the galaxy. They had to accept it. On Earth, Ambassador Mi-sun Park worked in a tall building in Geneva. Her job was to represent humanity to the Galactic Council. She had done this job for 20 years. In that time, she had given hundreds of speeches. She had written thousands of reports. She had begged and pleaded and negotiated. Nothing ever changed. The Council allowed humans to have only 3 colony worlds beyond Earth. 3 worlds for 8 billion people. Meanwhile, species like the Vrexil had hundreds of colonies. The Quillari, who could read minds, controlled entire sectors of space. They all got rich while humans struggled. Mi-sun tried to stay positive. She told herself that things would get better. If humans worked hard and followed the rules, eventually the Council would see their worth. Eventually humanity would earn respect, but deep down she was starting to doubt. Today was another Council meeting. Mi-sun put on her best suit and traveled to the Council station in orbit above the moon. The station was huge, built by aliens thousands of years ago. It made everything humans built look small and primitive. She walked into the council chamber. 47 different alien species sat in a great circle. Some looked like insects. Some looked like clouds of gas. Some were robots. Some were creatures she could not even describe. They all turned to look at her as she entered. She felt very small. Mi-sun walked to the speaker's platform. She took a deep breath. Then she began her speech. She talked about humanity's progress. She explained how Earth's population was growing. She showed charts about food production and technology. Then she made her request. She asked the Council to allow humanity one more colony world. Just one. Before she could even finish, the Vrexil High Commander stood up. He was 3 meters tall with golden scales. His voice was deep and loud. He said humans were greedy. He said they could not even manage 3 worlds properly. He said Earth was overcrowded because humans bred like insects. Other council members laughed. Mi-sun felt her face turn red. She wanted to shout at them. She wanted to tell them how hard humans worked, how much they sacrificed. But she stayed calm. She had to stay calm. That was her job. The council voted. The result was quick. 44 voted no. Only 3 voted yes. Those 3 were small species, weak like humans. Their votes did not matter. Mi-sun bowed her head. She thanked the council for their time. Then she turned to leave. As she walked toward the door, the Vrexil High Commander called out to her. His voice echoed through the chamber. He said perhaps when humans evolved beyond their pitiful nature, the council would consider it. Until then, humans should know their place. The chamber filled with laughter again. Mi-sun kept walking. She did not look back. But her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anger. Back on Earth, Admiral Sang-woo Choi sat in his office at the United Defense Fleet headquarters. He watched the council meeting on his screen. He saw Mi-sun's humiliation. He saw the aliens laughing. Sang-woo was 60 years old. He had served in the military his whole life. He remembered when humans first met the council, 30 years ago. Back then everyone was so excited. They thought joining the galactic community would be wonderful. Instead, it had been 30 years of humiliation. 30 years of being treated like children, 30 years of watching other species grow rich while humans struggled. But Sang-woo had not wasted those 30 years. While the council thought humans were weak, he had been working, planning, preparing. The council had banned humans from making certain weapons. They said it was for safety. Really, it was to keep humans weak. But the council had never understood how creative humans could be. They never asked what humans could do with civilian technology. They never imagined that mining equipment could become weapons, that cargo ships could become warships, that desperate people could become dangerous. Sang-Woo had files hidden in secure locations all over Earth. Plans, blueprints, secret factories. For 20 years he had been building an insurance policy, just in case. He hoped he would never need it. On a research station near Jupiter, Dr. Jiwoo Lee studied alien technology. She was 35 years old and brilliant. She had multiple degrees in physics and engineering. The council allowed humans to study their technology, but only the old stuff. Nothing current, nothing useful. Still, Jiwoo learned what she could. She noticed something interesting. Alien species were very smart, but they all thought the same way. They followed patterns. They used logic and order. Humans were different. Human minds were messy, chaotic, emotional. But that chaos created something the aliens did not have. Creativity, the ability to see problems from new angles. The willingness to try crazy ideas. Jiwoo wrote reports about this. She sent them to the council's science division. They never responded. She suspected they never even read them. Why would they? Humans were Class 9. What could they possibly teach advanced species? That night Jiwoo sat alone in her lab and looked at Earth through the window. It was a beautiful blue marble in the darkness. 8 billion people down there just trying to live their lives, trying to build a future, and above them the Galactic Council keeping them down, keeping them small. Jiwoo wondered how long humans would accept this. How long before someone pushed back? How long before humanity stopped asking for permission and started taking what it needed? She did not know that the answer would come very soon. She did not know that in just a few weeks everything would change. The Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. They thought humans were weak. They thought humans would always obey. They never stopped to ask what would happen if they pushed too far. They were about to find out. New Eden was humanity's pride. Of the 3 colony worlds the Council allowed, it was the most successful. 3 million humans lived there. They had built cities and farms. They had schools and hospitals. Children played in parks. Families gathered for dinner. It was everything humans had dreamed of when they first reached for the stars. Hee Jin-song taught at the elementary school in the capital city. She was 32 years old with 2 young children. Every morning she walked them to school. Her daughter was 8. Her son was 5. They would run ahead laughing and playing. Hee Jin would watch them and feel grateful. This world was safe. This world was theirs. Jin-Soo Park was the colony administrator. He was a careful man who followed every rule. He made sure New Eden paid its taxes to the council on time. He kept detailed records. He wanted no trouble. He believed that if humans were good citizens, the council would leave them alone. Then the Vrexel came. A survey ship discovered something in New Eden's crust, a rare mineral. The Vrexel used it to make their weapons more powerful. There were other sources of this mineral in the galaxy. The Vrexel already controlled dozens of worlds that had it, but they wanted more. They always wanted more. The Vrexel Empire sent a petition to the Galactic Council. They claimed New Eden was a strategic resource zone. They said they needed to mine the minerals for galactic security. They requested that all humans be evacuated immediately. When Jin-Soo heard the news, he could not believe it. He called Ambassador Mi-sun Park on Earth. She told him she would fight this. She told him not to worry. But Jin-Soo was worried. Very worried, Mi-sun traveled back to the council station. This time she brought lawyers. She brought evidence. She brought proof that humans had legal claim to New Eden. The colony had been there for 40 years. The Vrexel had approved it themselves back then. Humans had invested everything into building it. 3 million people called it home. She stood before the council and gave the best speech of her life. She talked about justice, about law, about basic decency. She showed them pictures of New Eden, the cities, the farms, the children. She begged them to see humans as people, not just numbers on a chart. The Vrexel High Commander listened with his arms crossed. When Mi-sun finished, he stood up. He said the Vrexel Empire needed those minerals. The needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few. Humans could find another world. There were millions of planets in the galaxy. Mi-sun said humans were only allowed 3 colonies. They had no other world to go to. The High Commander shrugged. That was not his problem. The Council voted. 44 species voted with the Vrexel. Only 3 voted for humanity. The decision was final. Humans had 30 days to evacuate New Eden, 30 days to move 3 million people. Mi-sun felt something break inside her. She had spent 20 years believing in the system, believing that justice would prevail, that hard work would be rewarded, that the Council would be fair. She had been a fool. Back on New Eden, panic spread. Jinsu tried to organize the evacuation, but it was impossible. Humanity's fleet could not move 3 million people in 30 days. It would take months, maybe a year. Jinsu sent urgent messages to the Council. He explained the situation. He asked for an extension. Just 6 more months. That was all they needed. The Council did not respond. Haye-jin watched her neighbors packing their belongings. Everyone was scared. Where would they go? Earth was already overcrowded. The other 2 colonies had no room. Some people talked about refusing to leave, about fighting, but what could they fight with? New Eden had no military, no weapons. The Council had banned that. Haye-jin held her children close at night. She told them everything would be okay. She was lying. She knew it, and they knew it too. The 30 days passed. About 500,000 people had evacuated. 2.5 million remained. They had nowhere to go. Ships were coming as fast as they could, but there were not enough. On day 31, the Vrexel fleet arrived. 20 warships entered orbit around New Eden. They were massive, dark, covered in weapons. Jinsu tried to contact them. He explained that people were still evacuating. He begged for more time. The Vrexel commander gave one response. He said the deadline had passed. All remaining humans had 1 hour to reach the spaceports. Anyone still on the planet after that would be considered hostile. 1 hour. For 2.5 million people ran. They grabbed what they could carry and ran for the spaceports. But the spaceports were too far. The roads were jammed with vehicles. Children got separated from parents. Old people collapsed from exhaustion. It was chaos. Haye-jin ran with her children. Her daughter cried. Her son could barely keep up. She picked him up and carried him. Her arms burned. Her lungs burned. But she kept running. The hour ended. The Vrexel opened fire. Beams of energy fell from the sky like rain. They hit buildings, parks, schools, roads, everything. The ground shook. The air filled with fire and smoke. Haye-jin saw a hospital explode. She saw a school collapse. She saw people vaporized in an instant. She ran faster. The spaceport was just ahead, just a little further. Then the ground in front of her exploded. The blast threw her backward. She hit the ground hard. Everything went dark for a moment. When her vision cleared, she looked around. Her children were gone. She screamed their names. She searched through the smoke and fire, but there was nothing. Just debris and ash. Someone grabbed her. A stranger. He dragged her toward a ship. She fought him. She needed to find her children. He would not let go. He pulled her onto the ship. The doors closed. The ship launched. Through the window, Haye-jin watched New Eden die. The cities burned. The forests burned. Everything burned. The bombardment continued for 6 hours. When it was over, there was nothing left. Just scorched rock and ash. 3 million people dead. The next day, Mi-sun Park stood before the Galactic Council. She could barely speak. She asked for justice. She demanded that the Vrexel be held accountable. She showed them footage of the massacre. The children, the families, the hospitals. The council chairman looked at her with cold eyes. He said the Class 9 species had been given adequate warning. The Vrexel had followed proper procedure. This matter was closed. Mi-sun stood there shaking. Not from fear. Not from sadness. From rage. She turned and walked out of the chamber. As the doors closed behind her, she made a decision. She had spent 20 years trying to work within the system. 20 years of diplomacy and patience and hope. That ended today. She contacted Admiral Sang-woo Choi. She said 3 words. No more mercy. The news reached Earth 12 hours after the massacre. Every screen showed the same images. New Eden burning. Cities turning to ash. 3 million souls gone in 6 hours. The world stopped. People gathered in streets and parks. They watched in silence. Some cried, some prayed, but mostly they just felt a deep, cold anger spreading through their bones. For 30 years, humanity had tried to be good members of the Galactic Council. They followed the rules, paid their taxes, worked hard. They believed that eventually their efforts would be rewarded, that they would be treated fairly. New Eden proved them wrong. The Council would never see humans as equals. To them, humanity was expendable, useful when needed, disposable when convenient. Admiral Sang-Woo Choi called an emergency meeting with Earth's leaders. Representatives from every nation gathered in a secure facility. Sang-Woo stood before them. His face was grim. He said they had two choices. They could accept this and live as slaves forever, or they could fight back, show the Council that humanity would not be pushed around anymore. A British representative asked what chance they had. The Council had thousands of warships, advanced weapons, hundreds of worlds. Humanity had almost nothing. Sang-Woo smiled. It was not a happy smile. He told them about Operation Prometheus. For 20 years, he had been preparing for this possibility. While the Council thought humans were weak and stupid, he had been working in secret. The Council banned certain weapons, but they never understood human creativity. They never asked what could be done with civilian technology. Mining lasers could cut through ship hulls. Cargo vessels could hide weapons. Construction drones could become bombs. Nanites designed for terraforming could eat through armor like acid. Sang-Woo had factories hidden across the solar system. He had weapons caches on asteroids. He had hackers ready to attack Council networks. He had plans for everything. The room was silent. Then someone asked if they could really win. Sang-Woo said winning was not the point. The point was showing the Council that humanity had teeth, that there would be consequences for their actions, that humans would not die quietly. The vote was unanimous. Every nation on Earth agreed. For the first time in human history, the entire species spoke with one voice. No more. Dr. Ji-Woo Lee was called to the meeting. Sang-Woo asked her about her research, the research the Council had ignored for years. Ji-Woo explained that most alien species evolved on peaceful worlds, stable climates, few natural threats. They developed technology slowly and carefully. Their minds were logical and ordered. Earth was different. Humans evolved fighting for survival every single day. Ice ages, predators, diseases, each other. The planet tried to kill them constantly. This created something unique in humanity, an ability to adapt, to innovate under pressure, to never give up no matter how bad things got. Other species saw this as primitive, emotional, chaotic. They were wrong. It was humanity's greatest strength. The first strike came 3 days after New Eden. Captain Dae-ho Kim volunteered to lead it. His cargo ship, the Indomitable Spirit, was one of the converted vessels. It looked normal on the outside, but hidden inside were railguns, missiles, and cyber warfare equipment. 5 more cargo ships joined him. They flew toward New Eden, where the Vrexel had already started mining operations. The Vrexel barely paid attention. They saw human cargo ships all the time, weak, harmless, nothing to worry about. When the ships got close, Dae-ho gave the order. The cargo bay doors opened. Weapons deployed. The ships transformed in seconds. The Vrexel never had a chance. Kinetic rounds tore through their shields. Cyber attacks shut down their defenses. Missiles struck with perfect precision. Within 10 minutes, the entire mining operation was destroyed. Dozens of Vrexel ships, hundreds of mining platforms, all gone. Before retreating, Dae-ho sent a message to the Vrexel homeworld. He said they took our world. This was just the beginning. The message spread across the galaxy in hours. Humanity, the weak Class 9 species, had just destroyed a Vrexel military installation. The Council was shocked, outraged. How dare these primitive creatures attack their betters? An emergency council session was called. Ambassador Mi-sun Park was summoned to explain. She arrived wearing a black dress. Morning colors. She walked to the speaker's platform. The chamber was silent. Everyone waited to hear her beg for mercy, to apologize, to promise it would not happen again. Instead, Mi-sun stood tall. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member. When she spoke, her voice was clear and cold. She said humanity was withdrawing from the Galactic Council. They rejected the Council's authority. They rejected the hierarchy. They would defend themselves by any means necessary. The Council wanted to see what humans were capable of. Now they would find out. The chamber erupted. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages. The Vrexel High Commander stood up. His scales flushed dark with rage. He said the Vrexel Empire would crush humanity within a week. He would personally see to it. Other species laughed at the audacity. Humans challenging the council. It was like an insect challenging a giant, foolish, suicidal. But a few of the oldest species did not laugh. The Korath, who had existed for millions of years. The Lumine, who had seen civilizations rise and fall. The Vekthar, who processed information across billions of minds. These ancient species looked at Misun and saw something the others missed. They saw the calm certainty in her eyes. The absolute lack of fear. This was not desperation. This was not a bluff. This was a species that had made a decision and would follow through no matter the cost. For the first time in 10,000 years, these ancient beings felt something they had almost forgotten. Fear. Misun turned and walked out of the chamber. She did not look back. Behind her, the council descended into chaos. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for negotiations. No one could agree. The unity that had held the council together for 10,000 years was beginning to crack. Back on Earth, Sang-Woo watched the broadcast of Misun's speech. Around him, his officers stood at attention. They waited for orders. Sang-Woo smiled. A real smile this time. He told his officers to prepare the fleet. The Vrexel would come. They would bring everything they had. They would try to make an example of Earth, but humanity had a surprise waiting for them. The Council had never understood that Earth was a death world, that humans were survivors, that they had spent millions of years learning how to fight impossible odds. The Vrexel were about to learn that lesson the hard way, and the Galactic Council would finally understand the blunder they had made. The Vrexel Empire assembled the largest punitive fleet in their history. 300 warships, enough firepower to destroy a planet. They broadcast their intentions across the galaxy. Humanity would be made an example. Other species would learn what happened when you defied the Council. The fleet traveled for 2 weeks. Every species in the galaxy watched. Most expected a quick victory. A few hoped humanity would somehow survive. But no one believed humans could actually win. On Earth, Admiral Sang-Woo Choi tracked the fleet's approach. His officers were nervous. 300 warships. The entire human fleet combined had maybe 60 combat-capable vessels. The math did not look good, but Sang-Woo was not worried. The Vrexel were thinking like traditional military powers. They expected a traditional battle. Ship against ship, fleet against fleet. They would learn that humans did not fight traditional battles. The Vrexel fleet entered the solar system. They detected human ships near Jupiter, small vessels, cargo haulers mostly, easy targets. The Vrexel moved to engage. Then the asteroid belt came alive. Rocks that had floated in space for billions of years suddenly activated. Hidden engines fired. Guidance systems engaged. Hundreds of asteroids, each the size of a building, accelerated toward the Vrexel fleet. Kinetic weapons on a scale the galaxy had never seen. The Vrexel tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. Asteroids slammed into ships at thousands of kilometers per second. Shields meant nothing. Armor meant nothing. The impacts were like small nuclear explosions. 12 Vrexel ships were destroyed in the first minute. The fleet scattered, trying to avoid the bombardment. That was when the drones appeared. Millions of them. Small, fast, autonomous. They had been hiding in the asteroid belt on moons and debris fields. Now they swarmed the Vrexel ships like angry insects. Each drone carried a small explosive charge. Not enough to destroy a ship, but thousands of drones could. They attached to hulls, found weak points, and detonated. The Vrexel shot them down by the hundreds. But for every one destroyed, 10 more appeared. Then the human ships attacked. They did not engage in honorable combat. They hid and ran. Appeared from behind planets and moons, fired and disappeared. Used the sun's radiation to hide their signatures. The Vrexel could not get a clear shot. Every time they focused on one target, another struck from a different direction. This was guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale. Earth had perfected these tactics over thousands of years of conflict. Small forces defeating large ones through creativity and determination. The Vrexel had never encountered anything like it. The battle lasted 3 days. The Vrexel lost 190 ships. Humanity lost 34. When the surviving Vrexel ships retreated, they did so in disarray, broken, defeated. For the first time in their empire's history, the Vrexil had been beaten in open combat. But humanity did not stop. Captain Dae-Ho Kim led strike teams deep into Council territory. They did not attack civilian targets, only military bases. Supply depots, communication hubs. They struck fast and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. The tactics were devastating. Council fleets could not protect everything at once. They never knew where humans would hit next. Trade routes became dangerous. Supply lines broke down. Paranoia spread. Every ship, every station, every world worried they might be next. Human hackers infiltrated Council networks. They spread false information, created confusion, made Council species question their leaders. Some species began to wonder if this war was worth it. If maybe the Vrexil had gone too far with New Eden. Within 3 weeks, 5 Council species petitioned for peace negotiations. The Council's unity was fracturing. Dr. Jiwoo Lee led a mission that would change everything. She and a team of specialists infiltrated a Quillari research facility. The Quillari were telepaths, mind readers. They had been studying human psychology, looking for weaknesses. Jiwoo found their research files. What she discovered shocked her. The Quillari had tried to control human test subjects telepathically. They had failed. Every time. Human minds were too chaotic, too emotional, too unpredictable. Where other species had ordered logical thoughts that could be easily manipulated, human consciousness was wild and free. This was not a weakness. It was a defense mechanism. Millions of years of evolution had made human minds naturally resistant to telepathic control. Jiwoo copied the files and broadcast them across the galaxy. The implications were devastating. How many council decisions had been influenced by the Quillari? How many species had been manipulated without knowing it? The Quillari, who claimed to be wise guides, were revealed as puppet masters. Overnight, the second most powerful species in the Council lost all credibility. Several species withdrew their representatives. Others demanded investigations. The Council's authority was collapsing. Desperate, the Council authorized planet-killer weapons. A coalition fleet of 12 species mobilized, over 2,000 warships. They would destroy Earth and end this rebellion once and for all. Admiral Sang-Woo Choi watched the fleet assemble. He knew humanity could not stop that many ships. Not with conventional warfare. It was time for the final card. He broadcast a message to the Council. He told them about Project Ragnarok. Humanity had placed undetectable antimatter devices on every major Council homeworld. If Earth fell, the devices would activate. The Council would burn with them. The Council demanded proof. Sang-Woo provided coordinates for one device. On a moon orbiting a Vrexil colony world, the Vrexil sent ships to investigate. They found it. A human-made antimatter bomb. Enough power to crack a planet. The coalition fleet stopped. Every species began searching their territory. Paranoia reached new heights. Were there really devices on every homeworld? Or was it a bluff? They could not take the chance. The truth was that humanity had placed devices on 3 worlds. Only 3. They did not have the resources for more. But the Council did not know that. And the fear was enough. For the first time, the Galactic Council faced a species willing to take them all down rather than submit. A species that valued freedom more than survival. It was a concept they could not understand. And it terrified them. Emergency council sessions became daily events. Some species demanded total war, consequences be damned. Others pushed for immediate peace. The moderates suggested negotiations. The hardliners called them cowards. Ancient alliances fractured. New factions formed. What started as a simple resource seizure had become an existential crisis. The Council's authority, built over 10,000 years, was crumbling. All because they had underestimated one species. All because they had pushed too far. On Earth, people waited. They had won battles, but not the war. The Council could still destroy them, but they had proven something important. That humanity would not go quietly. That they had teeth. That respect could not be given. It had to be taken. Ye-Jin Song watched the news from a refugee center. She had survived New Eden, lost everything. Her children, her home, her life. But she saw what humanity was doing, fighting back, making the Council pay. It did not bring her children back. Nothing could. But it meant their deaths would not be forgotten, would not be ignored. She thought about the human spirit. How humanity had always faced impossible odds and found a way. How they never gave up. Never surrendered. It was what made them human. The Council was beginning to understand that now, and they were starting to realize their terrible mistake. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. For 10,000 years, this body had maintained order across the galaxy. Now it could not even maintain order in its own meetings. The Vrexel demanded total war. They wanted to mobilize every ship in the galaxy and crush Earth, regardless of the antimatter threat. Pride demanded it. Honor demanded it. Other species disagreed. They said the risk was too great. If the bombs were real, homeworlds would burn. Billions would die, all because the Vrexel wanted revenge for New Eden. Some pointed out that the Vrexel had caused this entire problem in the first place. Arguments broke out. Ancient alliances cracked. Species that had been friends for centuries now shouted at each other. The council chairman tried to restore order but failed. No one listened anymore. Trade was suffering. Ships refused to travel through space for fear of human attacks. Economies were collapsing. Citizens across the galaxy questioned why they were fighting this war. Why so many resources were being spent on a conflict that seemed to benefit no one. Then 3 of the oldest species requested a private meeting with humanity. These were the species that had founded the Council ages ago. The Korath, ancient beings in mechanical bodies. The Luminae, energy creatures who had abandoned physical form. The Vecthar, a hive mind spanning billions of individuals. These elder species rarely involved themselves in council politics anymore. For them to call a meeting meant something important was happening. Admiral Sang-Woo Choi, Dr. Ji-Woo Lee, and Captain Dae-Ho Kim traveled to a neutral space station. They went armed and cautious. This could be a trap, but they went anyway. The meeting room was simple, just a table and chairs. The 3 elder species appeared. The Korath looked like a massive robot. The Luminae was a ball of glowing light. The Vecthar manifested as a shimmering cloud of particles that somehow felt alive. The Korath spoke first. Its voice was deep and ancient. It said they understood now. The Council had made a grave mistake. Not just in taking New Eden. The mistake was far older than that. The Council had never truly studied humanity. They had judged humans by their own standards, by their own experiences. They assumed that because humans were different, they were inferior. The Luminae spoke next. Its voice sounded like music. It explained that most Council species evolved on peaceful worlds. Stable climates. Abundant resources. Few threats. They developed technology slowly and carefully. Violence was rare, Earth was different. The Luminae had studied human history. Ice ages that nearly killed them. Supervolcano eruptions. Massive predators. Deadly diseases. Humans faced extinction dozens of times. They survived through innovation and determination. This created a psychology unlike any other species. Humans were warriors, survivors. They refused to give up even when logic said they should. They saw impossible situations as challenges, not endpoints. The Vecthar added its perspective. Processing information across billions of minds gave it unique insight. It said humans possessed traits the Council considered primitive. Aggression, emotional volatility, irrational determination. But these were not weaknesses. They were survival mechanisms refined over millions of years. Humanity was not inferior. They were specialized, different. The Council had mistaken difference for weakness. It was a catastrophic error in judgment. Sang-Woo listened carefully. He did not trust easily. This could still be manipulation. But he sensed something genuine in their words. Something like respect. The Korath continued. It said the Council had grown complacent. They ruled through hierarchy and tradition. They never questioned their own biases. They treated humans as inferior because they were different, not because they were weak. The destruction of New Eden was not just a crime. It was a failure of wisdom, a failure to see that every species has value. That diversity makes the galaxy stronger, not weaker. Then the Korath did something unexpected. It apologized. On behalf of the elder species, it asked for forgiveness. It asked what would be needed for peace. The room was silent. Sang-Woo looked at Ji-Woo and Dae-Ho. They were thinking the same thing. This was the moment. Everything depended on what they said next. Sang-Woo spoke carefully. He said humanity did not want to rule the galaxy. They did not want revenge for every insult. But they would never again accept being treated as lesser beings. Never again would they bow to species who saw them as inferior. His terms were simple. The Galactic Council must be reformed. No more hierarchy by species. No more exploitation of weaker civilizations. The Vrexel leadership must stand trial for New Eden, and humanity must be granted equal standing with all council races. These terms were not negotiable. The elder species communicated among themselves at speeds beyond human comprehension. Thoughts were shared. Probabilities calculated. Consequences considered. Finally, the Korath responded. It said the terms were acceptable. The council would be restructured. The species classification system would be abolished. The Vrexel leadership would face justice. This war would end. But the elder species asked for something in return. They asked humanity to help rebuild what had been broken, to share their unique perspective, to teach other species about resilience and adaptation. The galaxy needed what humans could offer. Jiwoo spoke up. She said humanity would help, but not as servants. As equals, as partners. If the council truly wanted peace, it had to mean something. Real change. Real reform, the Lumini agreed. It said change would come. The old ways had failed. New Eden had proven that. The galaxy needed a better system. One built on justice rather than power. Daeho asked about the 3 million dead. About all the humans who suffered under council rule for 30 years. Would there be justice for them? The Vekthar responded. It said the dead could not be brought back. But they could be honored. A memorial would be built on New Eden, maintained by all council species. A reminder of what happened when power was abused. The meeting lasted several more hours. Details were discussed. Plans were made. Trust was built slowly, carefully. Both sides knew this was fragile. One wrong move could shatter everything. Finally, they reached an agreement. A ceasefire would begin immediately. Formal peace negotiations would follow. The council would begin restructuring, and humanity would get justice for New Eden. As they prepared to leave, the Korath spoke one last time. It said the council had learned an important lesson. Never judge strength by appearance, never mistake difference for inferiority, and never push someone too far because you do not know what they are capable of until their backs are against the wall. Sang-woo nodded. He understood. The council had seen humanity as weak, as primitive, as expendable. They had learned the hard way that none of those things were true. The 3 humans returned to Earth. The news spread quickly. The war was over, not through surrender but through respect. Humanity had forced the galaxy to see them as equals. People celebrated in the streets. But there was also sadness. 3 million people dead, countless others wounded. The price of freedom had been high. Ambassador Mi-sun Park stood at a memorial service for New Eden's victims. She looked at the names carved in stone. So many names, so many lives lost. She thought about her 20 years of diplomatic work, all the speeches and meetings that had accomplished nothing. Then she thought about these past few weeks, how humanity had finally gotten the respect they deserved, not through words but through strength. It should not have required war. It should not have required death. But the council had left them no choice. Now came the hard part. Building peace, ensuring this never happened again. Creating a galaxy where all species were truly equal. It would take time, but humanity had proven they were patient, determined, and unwilling to ever be pushed down again. The Galactic Council had realized its blunder. Now they would all work together to build something better.